Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
What was kind of the thought process into making the switch to Brendan when you did, and is he now your permanent starting quarterback?
Yeah, we'll see on that. Permanent's a strong word, right? But it's like super glue or whatever.
Super glue. A lot of fans hoping that one sticks there on a Monday as we start this edition of Eye on the Hawks. Mitch Vick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here with you. Thanks for tuning in. Whether you're watching live on a Monday on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel or listening to this wherever you get your podcast, of course, just search Eye on the Hawks there. You can follow us on that same moniker on Twitter or, again, the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel. Lots to get to today, certainly. Talk about the defense having a big bounce-back game. Cade Weegan finally doing what we've been waiting for Cade Weegan to do and that we just talked to Cade Weegan about doing on Tuesday. But we start with quarterbacks. The change so many people were asking for, begging for, booing for, cheering for, is now forthright and coming, it seems. Brendan Sullivan going in the second quarter of Iowa's 40-14 win over Northwestern on homecoming and doing fine, doing well, as much as you could probably ask for. We'll get into the numbers in a little bit, but let's jump right into it as we hear from Brendan Sullivan, Kirk Ferentz, and Mason Richmond about number one possibly being QB1, at least for one day in Iowa City.
Like everybody else, there's a lot to improve on, whether that's passing, whether that's running, I think decision-making as well. I think it just adds another element to be able to run the ball. But definitely a lot of film to go back and look at and learn from. Yeah,
I mean, we had already made the decision during the week that we were going to rotate Brendan in a little bit and, thought third, fourth series. So depending on how it played out, so it just worked out that way. And then he did a really nice job. And, Cade was shook up also after the hit he took.
Having Sully in there was a little bit of a spark for us offensively and, got us going for sure. But no matter who's back there, we kind of got to do our job the exact same way, like I've said. But, I just want to give credit to Brendan. He obviously was super amped up for this game, playing his former team. And, I grabbed him after a couple of touchdowns. He just started turning and chirping at them. I said, just go celebrate with us real quickly. We don't need 15 yards. We had probably too many penalties today too. So, but no, I thought, he did a great job stepping in there and, being ready for that moment. It was just, it's hard. You're sitting there and he's been cold all year, technically. Red zone, you can call him hot, but, that's only, a quarter of the game maybe. So, he's ready for all those situations. So he did a good job. The only thing I told Jennings is, there was a couple pass plays we got in, maybe empty or had one in there. And, it was obvious passing situation. I said, just keep blocking because you never know. Guys, he's not young, but he's younger. He might be scrambling around back there, so you never know. Never give up on the play was the biggest thing I told Dunk and some of the guys because, with a scrambling mobile quarterback like that, you never know.
So, what do we think?
It was a spark plug, certainly. I mean, it's like everything just seemed to start going in motion when Brendan came in that game on Saturday. It seems like just the offense had more energy. Brendan is really electric out there. Outside of just his play on the field, he just has so much vibrance and energy. And maybe part of that was, again, going against his former team. He was doing a lot of chirping against his sideline, but he really brings a very youthful exuberance out on the field. And as I think, Mitch, you and I talked about after the game, it's not like this Brendan being in there is going to fix a lot of the passing woes.
Yeah.
But certainly this offense looked much, much more capable after he came in there. I'd be curious to see how many of Kaleb's yards came after Brendan was in the game, but it was, I would say 90% of his yards came after Brendan was in there. Just everything seemed to open up so much more for Kaleb, so much more for even some of those short dump-off passes. Brendan going down the field and doing some blocking. Everything just seemed to open up, part like the Red Sea when Brendan Sullivan came in.
Yeah, like you said, it was a spark plug, and the mobility is really, I think, the main thing that he brings to this offense that, you're just not getting with Cade. And like you said, the passing game wasn't a whole lot better. He didn't make those mistakes that Cade made. The pick he threw that was called back for the roughing, and the pick that ended up being, half of Northwestern's points. Just extending those plays, I think he got a few first downs with his legs that if Cade was back there, they're either incompletes or, a sack. So that's the kind of thing that this offense has been missing since maybe a C.J. Beathard, really. But it's something that some Hawkeye fans have been clamoring for ever since you had that Heisman runner-up in Brad Banks who could do this. And obviously he's not on that level.
Right.
But it's just welcome sight to see Because if you can't throw the ball down the field, which that's still to be determined for Brendan, at least he can get the move the ball on the ground. And like you said, and Kaleb even said this in the postgame, like things started to open up, and who knows if the offensive line would have wore down that defense eventually. Northwestern's main best part of their team is their rush defense. So like right out of the gate, they were kind of keeping Kaleb bottled up. Who knows if that happens in the second half if Cade's in there, but I think the threat of the run really, Northwestern has to key on that, and he burned them a few times, and they had to account for that.
Yeah. Cade's first semblance of throwing the ball downfield this season came on one of those first drives where he threw it down, and Seth Anderson had that nice diving catch. That was about, is that the longest passing play they've had all season?
Yeah.
So that's the first we've had a semblance of any sort of deep pass threat, and so it's not like the pass threat was there before, and so now, it's still not there, but at least we've got Brendan's mobility.
Kudos on that completion, because he did hit him, but, not to be like the nitpicker, it probably should have been a touchdown, just how open he was. But a great catch by Seth, and still a good throw. Just wasn't a great throw, He just parsing hairs or splitting hairs there, He
had a nice catch a couple plays later when he tried to find him in the end zone. I'm not sure if Seth necessarily even had to dive. He maybe could have stayed on his feet and tried to pull that back in, but at least he made another attempt at a nice catch there too.
Good read on that one too, yeah. But, couldn't get the feet down, and I don't even know if he completed the process.
I think we already saw what Brendan does in the running game in terms of eyes and motion, because that's what he is. He's the next evolution of the motion that we saw introduced in the spring and heard the Iowa's defense talking about just needing to be more eye disciplined. And this is a Phil Parker defense that's not just about, it's quote-unquote vanilla, you know what you're getting, all that. As you see on the YouTube channel, Tim Lester just beaming, talking with Brendan after the game. On that first touchdown run near the end of the first half that Kaleb had, Tyler Tashman pointed this out from the Register. The Northwestern defender, just as they're meshing Kaleb and Brendan, you see that Northwestern defender just for a split second follow Brendan just a little bit. And Kaleb did the heavy lifting on that.
Yeah.
Stiff arm, spin move, whole 9 yards. But that's what Brendan does. Just like the motion plays with the defensive eyes, just him being in there and knowing what he can do a little bit, on that play to Pascuzzi where he just fakes the pitch one way, gets the defense going another way, and then ends up being the lead blocker too. It's those little things, and what a great moment that Owen captured here of him with his family. Pat Fitzgerald, his college coach at Northwestern, was there.
Jacob Gill's mom.
Jacob Gill's mom, of course, a big hug as well. This felt different than a lot of moments in Kinnick, because we were just talking about this before we came on here on a Monday. This is kind of uncharted waters for Iowa. They've had 2008 where you were kind of going Jake Christensen, Ricky Stanzi, Jake Christensen, Ricky Stanzi. I can't recall a situation, and you had Kyle McCann and Brad Banks in 01 going a little back and forth. This felt like a passing of the torch mid-season, which I can't recall a situation or a game or a scenario where that has happened like that. And, people have been asking for this for a while. Heck, there are people that were wondering if it should happen at the start of the season, which was probably unlikely. He got here in June. It was a learning curve. But you always have to look for the poetry in life. The fact that the kid that went to Northwestern, against Northwestern, at his new school's homecoming, is the guy who comes in and is the spark to get the win over that team, to kind of flush a lot of bad vibes from a loss in his home state the week before. There was something very serendipitous about those moments, the fact that Fitzgerald is there, the fact that his family's there. And, you got another family on another side that we'll talk about here in a little bit they had a tough weekend. But what a cool moment for Brendan Sullivan. And if we get the depth chart out today and he is the guy going forward, we watched the changing of the guard in a lot of ways, which again, in a program where you've got a quarter century plus of a lot of stability, there aren't a lot of those scenarios and situations at all. And you've also got, we'll have Mike play this. This is a good incentive to get on the YouTube channel, because otherwise you're just about to hear 30 seconds of just guttural crowd noise. The moment where the crowd at Kinnick, coming off the kickoff after the pick six from Cade, where the crowd starts to realize Brendan's coming in. I watched it back today, and I hadn't really paid it much mind since Saturday. I got chills. And so if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see that here. If you're listening, get to the YouTube channel, watch this. But this is the moment, about 27 seconds, where the Kinnick crowd realizes the change is happening.
We had that conversation last week about Pat Anger's post about, really letting QB1, whoever that might be, the fans voicing their support for him. And I just wonder how much hearing those fans voice their support for him helped Brendan when he was coming in there, just to be like, these fans are cheering for me. These fans have wanted to see me here. Taking any sort of QB competition out of the conversation, just him saying like, boy, these fans really want to see me succeed, and him going out there and proving them right or giving them a show. Like, I have to think that instilled some sort of even a little boost of confidence in him when he stepped on that field.
Yeah, probably had to. I went to the game, first one in Kinnick Stadium all year for me, and I was kind of peeking around. I was like, can't really tell because I was on the opposite, the visitor sideline up in the nosebleeds, so to speak. But I couldn't see the number, and I'm just like waiting here. I hear this guttural, like, people getting pumped up. I'm like, it's got to be the time for the change, because after that pick six, there were some boos. I mean, even the week before, or the drive before, I think there were some boos after that would-be pick. I felt really bad though for Cade, because
it sucks.
He puts in the work, and he's not the quarterback for this team, and that sucks. That's a hard reality that I think he has to come to grips with. This team does, and the fans probably already did a few weeks ago. But you still gotta feel a little bit for the human that's inside the helmet, and just because a couple of those plays, he wish he had back. But looking forward, I'd be shocked if Brendan's not on the depth chart, QB1. But weirder things have happened.
Yeah, it certainly feels different because it's not the first time, even in recent years, that there's been a mid-game quarterback change for the Hawkeyes. Obviously the bowl game, Deacon got taken out for Marco Lainez. I think it was just 2 years ago against Ohio State that Spencer got pulled for Alex Padilla around the third quarter, I believe.
Yeah, those were two blowouts, though.
Right.
And Alex had played for Spencer when Spencer had been hurt. And
and
that was again that was.
That felt a little different. You don't
Ohio
think?
State was a little, that was. Things got sideways, and then they went upside down, and then they went sideways again. And continued to kind of
turned over.
It was,
times.
yeah.
So this one does just feel a little bit different, where even with Alex Padilla coming in, it's not like he came back and led some sort of a comeback against Ohio State.
I think he fumbled the snap immediately.
Yeah. Well, and then it was that Nebraska game later, or was that was 21, where it was.
I was there. Yeah.
Spencer that came in for Padilla, and sparked a little bit of a second half comeback. But this is just
A little pump block though, really did the sparking.
Kyler Fisher.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Freshman Kyler Fisher, I believe that was, or a younger Kyler Fisher. But it all just felt different. But whatever happens with Brendan, it seems like the writing's on the wall. But we'll see. But again, on the other side of that wall is a kid who's been to a national title and has won a Big Ten title at another school. And boy, on December 1st of 2022, when that social media post goes up, the world was Cade McNamara's oyster wrapped in a corn husk.
That basketball game you went to, like that. I was going to say after this clip, the second biggest pop of the day behind Caitlin Clark in the women's basketball team. But when Cade was at that men's basketball game, it was probably the biggest pop in Carver Hawkeye.
It was really cool.
And just didn't work out.
But things have changed. But let's hear from Brendan Sullivan and Kirk Ferentz more overarching about the quarterback one situation, and the legend himself, John Campbell, is the one asking the question that you'll hear at the top of this.
Do you assume you won the starting position today for next week?
I do not. No, it's not something I'm going to speak on. I don't know what decisions they're going to make, and so I'll just leave it there.
Can't say enough about that. He's been really good. And, it was maybe an adjustment here last year. He was never healthy, but he's been great this entire year, going back to January. And, he never got on track at all a year ago, so it's hard, and that's really hard. But he's been tremendous. I don't know. We sent him to the bench, and again, this was pre-planned. We communicate with everybody, especially the parties involved, just what our plan was and why. And I didn't see it as a demotion as much as, like, Brendan's been doing a good job. We want to learn more about him, and we feel like we can win with both of them. So keep our fingers crossed. And to that point, not that, but I mean, a week ago, Monday, I know it was a big topic. 2 weeks ago, Monday, it wasn't a topic about who our quarterback was. So that's the nature of football, and you can't worry too much about that. And our job as coaches is to try to do what's best for the team.
I agree with that sentiment. I also, if you listened on Wednesday, I thought Cade's performance, or the perceived lack thereof, in East Lansing was not nearly as far gone as fans made it out to be. But I think it was just in that first half and then the pick, folks certainly weren't happy. Listen, the really tough pill to swallow with all this is, if this is Cade McNamara getting switched out, benched, whatever verbiage you want to use, it's the end of his college career, more likely than not. And that's a tough, that sucks. That sucks for anybody, because it all ends eventually for every player. It's just the fact that his final pass in black and gold, his final pass as a college player, maybe his final pass as a player, period, I don't know what his pro aspects would be at any level, is a pick six where you kind of get booed off the field. That blows.
Yeah.
It really does. And listen, he's at almost every media availability. We talk to him all the time. He stands in the pocket, so to speak, there, handles all the questions. He's a great guy to talk to. He's a tremendous leader. He's been a captain for every game he's been in Iowa City. He's had to deal with all these injuries, and that's probably thrown him a little sideways. And, again, came to Iowa City with such high hopes and fanfare, and then the quad, and then the ACL, and just everything under the sun. And it'll be looked at as a disappointment probably, but Cade McNamara, whatever's coming up in these next 4 or 5 games, man, you've been the leader that everyone's asked you to be, even if the things on field haven't unfolded the way. But it's a difficult scenario, and certainly was a difficult day to watch, even after the Seth pass, as we look back on his day and maybe his last pass as Hawkeye QB1. But Owen, your thoughts on Cade's day and Cade's legacy, if we want to get that far.
Sure. Yeah, it is tough, because he's a guy that I think every media member really does like and always enjoy talking to. He's always pretty forthright and honest and open, and doesn't just give us the generic sound bites, but he tells us like it is. And I mean, I don't mind saying he got my vote for the Golden Gavel this year, which goes to the Hawkeye player that's the most, open, honest, workable with the media. Like, I think Cade has just been that every week. I mean, again, after losses, after wins, during the week, he just comes out and he takes the questions, and he knows that the tough questions are going to be coming. So I've always enjoyed our interactions with him, and he seems like a very genuine, heartfelt kid. You almost hope that he might have, because technically, I think he could play one more year of college football. He has that year of eligibility left. And so,
how does that work?
Because he played in the 21 season.
Okay.
And he did not play the 22 season. 23 counts for his eligibility, as does this, but no other season counts.
As far as I can find, he's out of eligibility. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm seeing a little. Not that it's important. It probably.
Yeah, we can double check that after.
But I mean, you do almost hope for kind of a.
I believe this is his last year. It's his 6th year. He redshirted as a true freshman. 2021 doesn't count towards eligibility. 21, 22, 23, 24. Because he played 5 games in 23. Maybe he could file hardship. He could go Cam Rising, but I'm not sure.
Did he play in 22 though?
Yeah.
He played 3 games before he got hurt.
So that could count as a redshirt year, couldn't it?
He already took his redshirt.
Took his redshirt. He redshirted as a true freshman.
Not medical either?
I don't think so. I think it was just redshirt. Yeah, you can only have one.
He could try for that's what I'm getting at. He could try for a 7th year, but anyways, it's. Go ahead.
My point I was just going to make is if you were able to file some sort of a hardship waiver for that last year, you'd almost hope for a Spencer Petras type of finish, where Petras is over there at Utah State really tearing it up and passing for a lot of yards and enjoying his time there out in Logan, Utah. And so you'd almost hope for something like that for Cade, that he could kind of shake this off and go somewhere else. Just because it is like it's been a hardship for him, just in terms of having to come in to a system where it's like, the quarterback play the last few years had not been great, and he's come into a system where maybe they weren't developing quarterbacks all that well at Iowa at the time based on who was offensive coordinator. And now he's got a different offensive coordinator that he's been having to adjust to this year. So even if the injuries were causing an issue as well, there was just some system issues that got in the way that have, I think, made it tough for him to succeed like he probably envisioned would have been his time here at Iowa City.
Yeah, and you guys know that football, I mean, it's a very physical game. So, like, while it does, and I agree with your sentiment, does feel like a passing of the guard to in midseason to Brendan Sullivan taking that role solely, like one injury could change all that. And, you know, I just think about that national title game with Tua and Jalen Hurts when they were flopping and Jalen Hurts got benched, or maybe it was flip-flopped. But anyway, one of them came back in the national title game, and obviously that's not in the cards for Iowa, but it could, you know, very well, there might be a game where we need Cade to come in and lead the Hawkeyes down the field. So, like, while his career might be over, he still has to practice like it's not. And I wonder also, you know, Northwestern's probably a bottom team in the Big Ten. I would say bottom 4 at least, you know. It's not like Iowa plays murderer's row, but Wisconsin has been playing better lately.
Wisconsin's scary.
Yeah. So what does it look like next week when, you know, it's a night game at Kinnick and you're playing a better team? Same with Nebraska. They gave Ohio State a scare. Now, I really don't know what I got with either of those teams. I think they can play scary. I think they can, you know, they've played bad this year too, so they're kind of, like Iowa, it's kind of like you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But I think at least we're hoping for Brendan to play solidly the rest of the year, but who knows what's going to happen at that spot, right? You just don't.
It's important. You heard from Kirk too. We feel like we can win with both of them, and I'm buying that sentiment. I know a lot of folks are not.
Yeah.
But you're in a good situation where you're assuming things go the way they're expected. Your one is a guy that really accentuates the running game and brings another dimension to what is one of the best rushing attacks in the country. And your backup is a Big Ten champion, national college football playoff participant, a guy who's played 30-some-odd games of college football. That's your backup. That's a nice little situation to be in if something needs to happen where you are running both guys, or Brendan gets hurt or something like that. That's an advantageous position to be in. You know, the old adage of if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. You have a couple decent scenarios there as you go into, again, a tricky 4-game stretch and then whatever comes in December.
I'll say this too about Sullivan. He's a mobile quarterback and he runs a lot, but he doesn't take the hits that some quarterbacks that are in that position do. Gets out of bounds a lot, you know. I don't know if he even took a big hit. I mean, the biggest hit might have been that block that he ran down.
Yeah, he got a hit on the sidelines where he went into the Northwestern bench. For a second, I thought, okay, like,
get your helmet back.
Yeah, or Marco if Cade wasn't available. Like it was. So there are scenarios that unfold when you're a running quarterback. Speaking of running, Kaleb Johnson, still great. 109 yards, I believe it was, off the top of my head. 3 touchdowns. He's 3 away from tying Sean Green's single-season rushing touchdown record. He's got 17 on the ground. Shaw had 20 in 08 and about 700 yards shy of that single-game record. Kaleb and Kirk and Mason Richmond or I guess not Mason Richmond. I won't tease him.
Not Mason
I won't tease
Richmond, no.
Mason Richmond. Sorry, he's good at blocking, though. Kaleb and Kirk on Kaleb being Kaleb.
It's just me. It's just like always just running hard now, you know, breaking off tackles and, you know, getting the yards, like I said, to put us in the best position to score and be successful. So that my main thing is not always just like score touchdowns. It's just me just putting my team in the best position to score and, you know, be successful. So
He's always been talented, and I think this year a couple things. I mean, he's more focused on the right things, and there's a lot. You know, every position's got a lot of things they have to be wired into. So I think he's got a better approach there. Just in general terms, I've always said, you know, usually year 3 is like a year where guys really start to come into their own. There's exceptions to everything, but that's usually a big year. And I still think, you know, he's had a lot of good runs since then, but I think one of the most encouraging things I saw was week 2 in that 4-minute. We were trying to bleed the clock. Yeah, there were 2 runs he had where he moved it, 5, 6, 7 yards, and it was blocked for 1 maybe. So to me, that was like, okay, this is a good sign. He's starting to figure out how to use what he has. And as you saw, I mean, he'll step through tackles. If you can get him through there, he'll step through tackles. It's really tough for them to bring him down, and he's really doing a good job finishing runs. So he's been delightful, and I think he showed off today. His high school coach was here, who actually brought him up here about 3 years ago, I guess it would have been, and helped keep him from going to Cal. Thank goodness.
Yeah, we'll save the West Coast trip for next week.
What would the Calgorithm do with Kaleb Johnson?
who wants to wax poetic this week about Kaleb Johnson? It's just, what more can you say at this point? He is as good as we've seen since '08, and yeah, have at it with the debate of where he is. If you're watching on YouTube, there's the through 8 games comparison with number 23, 31 less carries for Kaleb compared to Sean in '08, and he is just behind, about dead even in yards, only 10 off Sean's pace, more than a yard, averaging more on the ground, and that touchdown ratio is significant.
The 8th game that year was Wisconsin. So he had 234 yards and 4 touchdowns. Sean Green did during that game. So it really would be Kaleb winning in all categories if the Wisconsin game was won back. He was only averaging like 100 or something yards, but still having more than 100.
Yeah. He does have 16 on the ground. I accidentally added that receiving touchdown.
Yeah.
17 total touchdowns. So he's still 4 off Sean's record, I believe, which was 20.
I'm surprised he has that many fewer carries than Sean Green at this point in the season, just because it feels like Kaleb gets the ball so much, and I'm sure it felt that same way with Sean in 2008, but the fact that he's got 31 less carries, almost a game's worth less of carries, really surprised me at this point that he's still been able to put up that kind of yardage.
What do you think his high number for carries is this season?
I was just about to look it up, but before I do that, I honestly think it's lower, like 25. Has he gotten over 30?
25 twice, and he hasn't done that in more than a month. These are his carries. Remember, he sat out the first half against Illinois State, 11 against the Redbirds, 25 against ISU, 25 against Troy, 21 against Minnesota, 15 against Ohio State, 21 against Washington, 14 against MSU, 14 against Northwestern. And he doesn't carry it that much. It's just every run's 20 or 30 yards.
And it's
because most of the offense is through him. I think it's a right thought to think that he gets the ball like so much.
Right. It's still impressive too that this was another game where he did not play one snap of the fourth quarter, I'm pretty sure. Again, another game where he's getting it all done in basically 45 minutes. Basically 20 minutes pretty much. The first quarter and first half of the second quarter, there wasn't a lot of signs of life in him or the rest of the offense. But, he came out late in the second half, or late in the first half, and just does what he continues to do every year, and that's what has to excite people. I feel like even more than wanting Brendan in at quarterback for the sake of Brendan, it's like you want somebody in there that can open things up so much more for Kaleb, and that's what we saw on Saturday. We got a glimpse of what that offense could be, what Kaleb could be with somebody else in there at QB.
Yeah, and Caleb's still second in the nation in rushing with, 1,144 yards. It's wild that Boise State's Ashton Jeanty has played one less game and has 1,376 yards. That's insane. I know he plays a lesser competition. We got to factor that into, but
and he had, was it in the opener? He had 350 and whatever it was.
And against Oregon, he had like over 200 yards too, I believe, or close to 200 yards.
Huge games. And listen, it's again, if you're hoping for like a Doak Walker and stuff, this is just the worst year to have.
Oh, 100%.
Year, you know what I mean?
Someone tweeted out though the number of stats that the last 2 Heisman Trophy winners, Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram, and he's outpacing both of them. The bad part is they were playing for undefeated Alabama, who won the national title both those years, I believe. So that's against him. And I hate how the Heisman Trophy is the best player on the best team. You have to be on a good team. I think it should be. It should go to Jeanty, I think, but it probably won't go.
He might be your leader, right?
Or Hunter, I guess. Travis Hunter's a hell of a player.
Great, but there's no other I feel on the top teams in the country, there's not that absolute, he's the best player on the best team. Because the best team, kind of all over the place right now.
Yeah.
You've seen some really good ones.
Do you guys think that, just say, for example, we take Ashton Jeanty out of the equation, he just has not played for Boise State this year. Do you think that Kaleb will be getting a lot more of the Heisman conversation? Because he's not even top 10 odds maker right now.
He's the best running back in the country going away.
It's still, Dylan Gabriel and Travis Hunter and Quinn Ewers and I don't know if Cade Klubnik's in there, but Cam Ward. It still seems like there's so many other guys that are getting conversation. Yes, Ashton Jeanty is, but I feel like I still don't hear any national narrative around Kaleb Johnson.
It's such a quarterback award and has been for quite some time that they're like, oh yeah, and Genty's awesome, so there's our running back to kind of fill that, and then you've got Hunter who does anything and everything. So I think that's just kind of like the formulaic.
It's hard too. It's hard as well just to be on a team that I know Jaden Daniels won it last year with 4 or 5 losses, but having more losses on your it sounds stupid, but it does really impact it. Yeah. So if Iowa was 7-1 instead of 5-3, that's the record, right? 5-3. Then I think he would be in that conversation.
Yeah.
But, they're not 7-1. That's the kind of deal that you need to be when you're a player on a team that's not like a blue blood.
But he's good. And he's got a heck of a test coming up against a Wisconsin defense that's a Wisconsin defense coached by former Cornell Ram Mike Tressel up there, his former Rams teammate Matt Mitchell, his linebackers coach. Well, speaking of defenses, Iowa's had a gut check game after Michigan State not getting off the field for a punt, giving up most yardage they had in 5 years. The defense is just fine in Iowa City, folks, at least for one day. Let's hear from Quinn Schulte, Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson about their day in the trenches against the Wildcats.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the standard's the standard. Obviously last week wasn't how we wanted to go. But this week I think we came out and gave good effort and good intensity, and so I think it worked out well.
Well, I mean, when you have a special player like Nick Jackson out there, just his ability to get to the ball, obviously deflected the ball. It was really up to me just to make the play. But he's one of those guys where I can count on him. Just happy that plays like that can happen.
You want to say something nice to him?
Well, let me just start with Jay Higgins. Always around the ball hawk. It's just like you tip the ball up and who else would catch it? It's just Jay's always around the ball. He's always making everybody right. Heck of a dude, and just seeing him and the growth over the season and just how he's always around the ball and just turnovers. Earlier on that drive, almost forced a fumble, so I'm glad he got back and that turnover kind of worked for him.
Before we get into too deep of analysis, Owen and I and several other members of the media were discussing this. I think it came up in maybe the post game, somebody referred to it as that first interception or Jay's interception, and then getting into the media room to edit afterwards. We on the field did not realize that was an interception or how exactly Jay Higgins came to be in possession of the ball until an hour and a half after that play.
Mm-hmm. And nobody got a good shot of it. I have no idea what that interception looked like. No media member does. I don't know if the game camera's got a good shot of it.
Game camera got a decent look at it, but on the field we just had, you saw my shot there. I just hold on Nick Jackson. I'm like, that's a great play. Oh, they're really happy. Oh, Jay has the ball. All right.
Yeah. Interesting play where I think you just see Nick reach up, and that was, he came in and was boasting about some of his leaping abilities in the postgame, but he knocked that ball down, and Jay, I think, just grabbed it. My camera kept panning to the left to where I thought the ball was going, and but sure enough, it's right there.
You can see it on the edges of my shot, just as I'm panning like to hold on to Nick.
Is it in this defense video that I can play?
Yeah, so go ahead. We'll watch the play again because we lead with this. So you just see very quickly, Jay's got it on the right side, and then you see him running across the side of the screen with it in his hand, but I'm not focused on it. I'm holding on Nick, but you can just see him just kind of moseying past, kind of open his way across. And then they said that was not a rehearsed celebration, by the way. And then I realized afterwards Nick Jackson pointed at me. He just saw a camera and did that. Max Llewellyn with the safety.
A great shot of that. I was in the 72nd row, like you couldn't tell. I thought he got out of there.
It was close. And then the great reaction shot where it was 3.5 sacks for Max Llewellyn so far this year. He's had great. Quinn Schulte, for the first time in his career, a multi-interception season, and he's had a couple now inside Kinnick Stadium, and also had that one last week, or a couple weeks ago, against Minnesota, so great to see that. Jamari Harris just decked a dude at one point. That was maybe his big impact play, literally and figuratively. Just a big day for the defense overall, and I forget what else is on this highlight reel we put together if you're watching. Oh, yeah, stand-up Detroit King, Kenneth Merriweather, redshirt freshman who was great for MLK up in Detroit as a high school player. A fantastic program up there. One of the best in the state. His first career half sack, but he's a dude to keep an eye on down the road playing for Kelvin Bell's defensive line. He was special.
Not to mention there was another turnover from
Will Hubert. Will Hubert, pride in
jumping
Nebraska. Yeah, he was a kid that, we watch these spring and fall scrimmages and you see a guy make a play and you're just like, oh, I'm going to really get emotionally invested in that fourth string D lineman. Will Hubert had one back in the spring where I was like, all right, let's keep an eye on this kid. He's got a little Connor Colby, Kyler Schott look to him, kind of the longer hair, a little scruff, but a great play for him late in that one. Listen, this is a big bounce back. I went up and looked kind of the defensive stats because, again, we've seen some of these kind of like slow starts, if you want to call them that, for the Iowa defense, maybe a missed tackle here or there. A.J. Henning, who, they didn't know if they were going to have him after last week against Wisconsin. He was out there and had a nice chunk play for Northwestern. But that opening drive for the Wildcats on Saturday, 7 plays, 43 yards. You missed that field goal. They had 13 drives after that I believe went something like 45 plays,
Pull this up real quick.
120 yards, bunch of punts. You obviously get the punt return that we'll talking about in a bit. That defense just started to look like a vintage Iowa defense again. You get a safety and a punt return touchdown. That's about as vintage Iowa as you could ask for.
That it's weird with that Quinn Schulte interception. I almost forgot that even happened because did the pick six come not long after that? Was that on the ensuing drive? Just that the Schulte.
So that was, I believe, near the end of the first quarter that he picks that the field flips, and that, or maybe it doesn't. So that was maybe the beginning of the second quarter because they're going that way.
Yeah, but that kind of got lost in the shuffle of all of the other things that were happening on the defense.
So you tweeted this on yesterday. 13 drives after that first drive, 45 plays, 120 yards, 8 punts, 2 interceptions, a lost fumble, a safety, and end of half. So
you can't ask for much more. I don't care if it's Northwestern or
I was just going to ask,
Oregon.
like, what do you, I'm seeing a lot of in the comments and on Twitter. It's like, well, yeah, they play this way against a bad team. Like, what do you say to that? Like, is that just like I think it's just a good game to get right.
Do what you're supposed to, quote unquote, do against the teams you're supposed to do it to. You look at what Wisconsin, they had a tough one at Camp Randall over the weekend, and that game was closer than a 2-score one against Penn State. But they housed Purdue and they housed Rutgers. You know what Wisconsin's supposed to do? They're supposed to house Purdue and house Rutgers. So you can't take it away when a team does what they're, again, quote unquote, supposed to do. But coming off what you were in East Lansing and doing what you could on homecoming against, again, watch Northwestern on film. Lausch can move around a little bit. They've got guys that can do things on offense and have moved the ball in other situations. They're not too far removed from hanging almost 40 on Maryland on the road. That's a team that can do some stuff, and Iowa made sure right after that first drive where they got a couple big chunk plays that it didn't happen the rest of the way. It was an impressive response to maybe the roughest game that a lot of those guys have played in.
Forced another quarterback to come in for Northwestern, too. They had to put Helinski in there in the fourth quarter.
He's been around for a while.
Yeah. That was about as good as it was a great bounce back game for Iowa, but I feel like the defense maybe needed the bounce back game more than anybody after suddenly the conversation around the Iowa defense is these guys can't tackle. And there were, a few missed tackles on Saturday.
5. They recorded 5 missed tackles, which is obviously way better than last week, 19 missed tackles. You're going to have missed tackles in every game. Sure. So it's not like there's rarely a game where you have 0, It just happens.
I think Kirk joked about that after the game. He was like, "Yeah, we tried these tackling drills." Suddenly,
what do you know?
But that was just the perfect game. I mean, it's unfortunate that still 14 points were on the board because they gave up that punt return touchdown for a second time this season. Giving up a punt return touchdown, I'd be curious to see the last time they gave up 2 punt return scores in the same season. Has to have been at least a decade since that as well. But outside of those 2 plays where the special teams and the offense gives up points, I mean, that was about a perfect performance for them.
Yeah, speaking of special teams, I mean, they played pretty well too. I mean, obviously with the punt return and the punts from Reese Dakin, I think he's been better than a lot of people, even, media included. They knew he was going to be good. Maybe he struggled to begin the season a little bit, but the past few games he's been just laying some punts out there.
He's been booming them.
Perfect placement for where they were on the field almost every time. I mean, the times that Iowa was backed up in the fourth quarter, I mean, they weren't really trying to push the ball down the field all that much. So when they're punting from their own 30, you don't really expect him to pin it inside the 10 again. But he was still laying out longer punts, and when it was a little bit shorter field, it just was going exactly where they wanted it to. I mean, it was not just inside the 20 or inside the 10. It was inside the 6, I think, every single time that he got his hands on the ball in the first half. I mean, he was about as perfect as you could want him to.
And that's one of the things that helped that defense limit the amount of yards and the first downs they were getting, because your play calling definitely changes when you're inside the 5 or inside the 10, because you don't want to give up that safety, which they actually ended up doing. But you have to get the ball out a little bit, and that makes you play it a little more conservative. So that definitely helps the defense. If you start at the 30, you have a little more wide open playbook where you can hit the defense with a little bit more.
Yeah. He's come a long way, and speaking of going a long way, Caden Weegan, finally, 85 yards, longest punt return for Iowa since Jovan Johnson did one 90 yards back in 2005. Happy to see the kid from Williamsburg score, as far as I know, the first touchdown for anybody from Williamsburg for the Iowa Hawkeyes. All due respect to Austin Blythe and everybody else. Maybe another PWO who's coming to the Hawkeyes after next week or this previous weekend might change that, and Race Heitman, who committed to the Hawks over the weekend. But Cade McNamara, a few days after we talked about him being so close, talks about getting over the proverbial hump.
Finally got in the end zone. We were talking about this earlier this week. I mean, scored, and then I looked up at the review. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I thought they were going to call me out for a second, but thankfully they called a touchdown, and all spirits are high right now. So, well, I was trying to remember what the hell happened, and I was running, and I was like, how did I even get to that point? But, I mean, good blocks, made a couple guys miss, and then got to the sideline, tried tight roping, and, I mean, the unit got me to the end zone. So, I mean, all credit to them.
Yeah, you see Zach Lupmer, Carson Sherrar, Alex Eichmann, a couple guys. He talked to us on Tuesday. Again, it felt like the will of the people kind of got done. Just like, Caden, come on, bud, come on, you got this. He talked about that opener against Illinois State where he houses one and it gets called back for a penalty. He said, that showed me, and he even talked about that opening kick to start the season. Felt good about the whole special teams unit. They've got some good guys on there.
It's a weight off his shoulders in so many respects because nearly every question he faced on Tuesday was about, boy, you're close. Boy, you're close. Boy, you almost break one. How close are you? And then even after the game on Saturday, it was like, oh, you finally broke one. How'd it feel to finally break one? How'd it feel to finally get over the hump? You finally broke one. And so now that he's got that one that he finally broke, he's like, all right, now I don't have to at least.
What are you guys going to talk to me about now? By the way, at the top of the hour, he was officially named the Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week. So congrats to Caden on that.
65 extra kick return yards, which, Northwestern had 20. That is a part of his game too that really helps Iowa when you're starting at the 40 or 30 as opposed to the 25. Mm-hmm. Like, I haven't looked into this, but you got to think Iowa's one of those teams that has the most kickoff return yardages because it always seems like he's taking the ball and getting like 20, 25 yards every kickoff.
And that punt, it's like, as you say, the will of the people. It's like people around me were even saying it as soon as it left the punter's foot. I heard people saying, oh, low line drive kick. This could be the one. And sure enough, he found a way to the sideline, was in bounds by the narrowest of margins. Boy, I was worried for a second, too, that was going to get called out because it couldn't get any closer, but he got it. Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week. Could have about shared it with Reese Dakin, as we say. I mean, he looked about as good as he ever has, but nice little honor to get for the Williamsburg alum.
Iowa is 8th in the nation with 478 kick return yards. Obviously, some of those are Max White in that final one against Iowa State, and then maybe he's got another one in there. But Caden, as an individual, I believe is a punt returner. It's like 7th in average yards. He's 8th. 8th in the nation in average punt return yards. He came into the game, I believe it was like 9.93 yards a return. Obviously, 85 yards will bump that up. 13.68. And the touchdown. So he is second in the Big Ten, just behind Coy Parrish, who's been awesome for Minnesota, stepping in as a true freshman and really doing well. But Caden's doing everything you could possibly want out of the special teams unit kickoff returns. He's been really terrific, too.
Now let's get him the ball on offense, guys, right?
Yeah.
That's the next evolution.
Mike, if you're just joining us, Mike's in year 2 of demanding more touches for Cade McNamara. And, hey, we'll see. Again, this is going to be an offense that you have to imagine really starts leaning into motion and sticking with maybe some line of scrimmage throws, and you don't know how
I really hope the RPO game will get worked in there. They had one play, and it worked pretty well.
Was that the one that went to, there's a throw to Jarriett maybe?
Yeah, it was over the middle.
It was a nice toss for sure. But, hey, we'll see as we continue to move forward. We did, on the injury front, not to backtrack a little bit, Reese Vanderzee was in a boot afterwards. We'll learn more tomorrow about his situation. He was in there in the first half, obviously, as a starter, but was in the boot for the second half. Luke Lachey was limping around afterwards. He was said to be an emergency option, Kirk pointed out. Addison Estringa is still in the sling. I'd be shocked if we see him before Nebraska at the earliest, maybe even longer. Bo Stevens still out as well. But so the injuries maybe, I won't say piling up because you want to see a pile up, go look at last year, but a couple things to keep an eye on as we go into Tuesday.
Yeah, that seems to be, hopefully not the emerging storyline of this team. Those injuries, they've been able to fill guys in, but it's something that at least is becoming part of the storyline of this team is that those guys are starting to get banged up as we approach the final what are we, 4 games of the regular season we got now?
4 games of the regular season.
4 games left, yep.
Kyler Fisher was also out. Sounds like he had some sort of bug, some sort of sickness. Sounds like
Maybe he had a quarter pounder from McDonald's.
Hey, we shouldn't joke about that, but yeah, sure. Could have had a sandwich of some kind. Who are we to say? As Kirk even mentioned, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out. We do need some sort of advice probably for our picks, though, if we want to go over those.
I'll tell you what, Owen, if you would have stuck to your gut, you would have been 4-1, had like the best week of our pick'em.
The Costanza backfires.
For everyone that didn't watch on Wednesday, Owen went opposite of what his gut was telling him, and he went 1-4 this week.
God bless you, Oregon. Help me out.
Was really disappointed in Illinois, man.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be. I didn't think they were going to go into Autzen and win, but that was rough. And Oregon just, kind of like Wisconsin, had a little slow roll against Western Michigan and South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
Idaho gave the Ducks a scare. And you're getting into November now, getting close to it, and you got a couple teams there playing really, really well.
Disappointed in Michigan State, who dropped one at the Big House. That's a rivalry, a tough game.
That's a tough one.
But so Mitch, you went 3-2, and our records are tied now at 18-22 over the season.
I hate that that's as good as it. We're leading. Yeah, that's not great.
Owen's 1-4 brings him to 16-24. So, I mean, this betting stuff is tough. If you can get to 50, you're doing pretty good.
Again, I say every week, I'm not. There's no money being wagered on these picks for obvious reasons on my side. But
I bet on Indiana this week, and they're a wagon right now.
They're fun.
Yeah.
That was a special scene for College Game Day. That was what I was doing in the stadium after I'd finished all of my work, was kind of watching some of the clips from Game Day that morning with Lee Corso. Just really rolled out the red carpet for him. And he had the old Indiana, not a onesie, but the full red union.
Promise?
Yeah, that was a beautiful tribute for him on Saturday.
Indiana, a football school, we all know it. Fun stuff there, and obviously on Wednesday, lots to look forward to in that battle for the Heartland Trophy. Again, a Wisconsin team coming off a 2-score loss that didn't look like a 2-score loss, as they really gave the third-ranked Nittany Lions everything they could handle. What are we looking forward to on Tuesday besides the obvious questions and maybe the revelation that could come today about what the quarterback situation is going to be?
Yeah, still no depth chart released. I've been kind of refreshing things every few minutes and still nothing out quite yet, maybe in the next 30 minutes or so. But that will be the predominant conversation, is just about the quarterback situation. Brendan Sullivan, what he brings to the table. I think people are curious about what his passing game is. I mean, assuming we talk to Brendan, I'd be curious to hear, is he what level of threat does he feel like in the passing game? Is that a big part of his game, or does he feel like he's more of just a mobile quarterback that can scramble around?
He looked pretty accurate to me when he did throw. They didn't, the one thing that I've been clamoring about, and some fans, like the downfield throws, and you get the first one with Cade, and then obviously he has another downfield throw, which Seth actually had some space if it's a nice throw. He gets hit, ball flutters, and is picked, but it gets, that's the rough end call that Cade got. I'm kind of curious to see, and I don't know how much they would offer this up on a Tuesday, give the opponent some time to prepare, but how much the offense changes. How much more RPO can you fit in there? Does it change at all? Hopefully, Tim's going to be like, all right, now I got someone at quarterback who can move. How can I manipulate the defense into, creating open holes for Kaleb, or freezing those linebackers so I could throw it over top your head, and safety. So I kind of want to know that. I don't know how much you say. It's not smart to give away your game plan on Tuesday, ahead of, on a feed that all the Wisconsin coaching staff can see. So that will be something to look for, though, just to see how much they give away, but how much their playbook changes.
Well, I think if we know anything about Iowa, it's that they're very open and honest about everything. I won't bring honesty into it. I mean, they keep stuff close to the vest.
You got to.
Yeah, that's football, from what I've been told. So we will be back here Wednesday, 1 o'clock on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel if you want to watch. Or otherwise, just keep downloading those links. Thanks for all the support, and keep an eye out on our social media tomorrow for everything we find out Tuesday there in Iowa City, and we'll see you the day after back here on Eye on the Hawks.